Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity Leadership Series organized by Cyber Houston. We are live and excited to have you join us today. In this series, we highlight our cybersecurity rockstars or masterminds and bring valuable information to you, especially during this unprecedented time of COVID-19. I am Umesh, Verma, CEO of Blue Lance and the founder of Cyber Houston. We would like to thank our sponsors, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Blue Lance, Reneka Digital, and the University of Houston Downtown for underwriting the Cybersecurity Leadership Series. Now, we are happy to answer questions along the way. So if you have a question or comment that comes up anytime during the session, please enter it in the comments section on Facebook or YouTube under the live video, and we will try and answer them. So today's topic is building safe and secure communities through the lens of cybersecurity. I am so glad to have one of my good friends, Jesse Carrillo, on our show today to be a part of our leadership series and share some of his knowledge with us. Hi, Jesse.
Hey, Umesh, how you doing, man? Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, good. Great you're here. So Jesse Carrillo is responsible for directing all corporate technology, strategy, and standards for Hines worldwide. Hines is a privately owned global real estate investment firm founded in 1957 with a presence in 205 cities in 24 countries. Jesse joined Hines in 1994 to assist in the implementation of the firm's accounting and property management software. He was later promoted to Manager of Application Development, followed by Director of Application Development. He took over the responsibilities for Hines IT as CTO in 2007 and was promoted to CIO in 2009. Jesse is a member of the CIO Executive Council, Greater Houston Cybersecurity Task Force, Real Estate Cyber Consortium, the Executive Vice President of the Houston chapter of Society of Information Management, or SIM, Prospanica, Association of Hispanic Professionals, and serves on the Realcomm International Advisory Council. Along with contributing to several technology articles, he was a featured writer for the book, Building a Green IT Team, part of the Inside the Mind series from Asportore Publishers. He is a strong supporter of promoting youth in IT through his involvement with GenesisWorks as a client and as a board member. He also serves as a VP of the Board of Trustees at the Schlenker School. Jesse has been recognized for his achievements by being named a Premier 100 recipient in 2016 by Computer World magazine, as well as the Julie Devine Digital Impact Award presented at the 2017 Realcomm Conference and the Realcomm Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018. Welcome, Jesse. It's so great to have you on our broadcast today.
Thank you, man. You sure you weren't talking about different people there?
No, I mean, I've known you for, oh my God, we've known each other for what, about 15 years or so. And, you know, we've done all these lovely, great things in the community together. So I am very sure I was talking about you.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, it's great to be here, catching up with you and chatting about what's going on right now.
So tell me, I mean, there's this little story about you being called Butter Knife. Where's that come from, Butter Knife?
Oh man, you're gonna make me tell that story. So I grew up, kind of in the barrios of San Antonio, playing a lot of street ball, a lot of basketball, and so I actually got pretty good at it. Played a lot of games, and then so when I went to Trinity University for my undergrad. When I went there, I, of course, hit the gyms and played a lot of basketball there. And I ended up playing a lot of intramural basketball. Never good enough to make a team, but really enjoyed the intramural. So I was a pretty decent ball player. And one year, I think it was my junior year, maybe, there was an article written about the intramural sports at the school, and they highlighted basketball. And the writer, kind of highlighted a few players, and then, he highlighted me, and he said that I think, trying to remember the exact wording was, kind of sliced through the lane like a warm knife through butter. So he was just describing how well I can move through the lane and get to the basket. And so, of course, the article came out, and all my friends, read it back at school, and And of course, that just makes you realize, who your true friends are, because they always bring you down to reality, right? Here I am thinking I'm all big shot and everything. And so they brought me down to reality and started calling me butter knife the rest of the semester. So that was my nickname for a while. So yeah, so here I am thinking I'm hot stuff, and your true friends always, bring you down, they knock you off your pedestal. So.
Well, we're going to adopt that, and we're going to call you butter knife with the way you sliced through and traversed through all of the different work product that we've put out with the Greater Houston Cybersecurity Council and all the stuff that you've been doing lately. And then you are surrounded by all your superheroes in your home office. Tell us about those superheroes and those mannequins.
Yeah, besides feeling safe, right? Because I'm surrounded by superheroes, but no, I'm a big comic book convention collector, statues and everything, and so I'm sitting in my media room. I was fortunate enough to build it a few years ago and kind of design it my way, and so you see a bunch of my things. But one of the things that people think I'm a little nuts about is I actually dress up mannequins as superheroes instead of buying real statues. And so I'll just give you a quick glimpse. But so there's like Captain America, so that's really like a Halloween cosplay costume, but that's a mannequin. And then I've got Black Widow on the other side, and so you can see some of the other rooms. So yeah, it's a little weird, but I dress them up as superheroes. And then they also serve as scary creatures during Halloween. So during Halloween, I dress them up as creatures and stick them out in the front yard. So that's how people know me in the neighborhood, the weird guy.
And you have a routine, don't you? Don't you change their costumes every month and clean them and keep them polished?
Well, and I think that was the thing is, when I started designing this room, I thought, it'd be great to have some full life statues of superheroes, but instead of buying one superhero statue and that's what you have in the room, I thought about the idea of the mannequins and just be able to swap them out, every few months, or when the timing is right. Same thing with the posters behind me. I'll swap them out, once a quarter, just to make the room feel a little different. So it's just it's what I do.
Well, that's awesome. So you've been working from home, and your entire organization's been working from home, Jesse. And let's talk about COVID-19. Most of our businesses in the Houston and the Gulf Coast area have kind of practiced and adapted to hurricane and disaster preparedness. But COVID was like on a global scale. How is that different for you and in your preparations or in the deployment? And what were some of the challenges you faced and lessons that you learned?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I think fortunate or unfortunate, especially Houston area where we're accustomed to hurricanes and we've all gone through quite a few. And that just helped make our disaster recovery plans stronger, contingency plans stronger. But it was always around, like, I can't get to that building, or and especially for Hines being a commercial real estate firm, global in 24 countries. And, it was always around, well, can I get to the building? Can I get to my equipment? Can I get to my resources? And even here during hurricanes, it was around that, right? And so I think we were all reasonably well prepared for that situation. But as you said, this is in a totally different scale. Nobody would have ever imagined that we would end up here. Even as we saw our teammates in China, because we are also in China, going through this early on, we could see that it was bad. But again, I don't think anyone of us imagined where we'd be today. But we did see it happening there. We saw it happen in Italy. So from a Hines perspective, we've had a pandemic task force and plan in place since the early 2000s when we saw the early ones out of China back then. And so we activated our task force probably late January. So we were already having conversations around, what happens if this gets more global, if it actually crosses over to the US. And so we were having several meetings, several discussions around that time. And so again, part of that was also on the technology front. How can we make sure our people are prepared? And then as Italy started going remote work or work from home, then we really kicked into high gear here, thinking, okay, what do we need to do? And so we tested a lot of our plans. We had people go home with their computers. We had them try to connect on the VPNs. We realized that we were lacking on some VPN licenses because we just didn't have that many people normally using them. So we had to quickly beef up our infrastructure around more VPN licenses. We had been pretty cloud-based already. So a lot of the applications and resources were cloud-based. So just making sure browsers were up to date, workstations were up to date. So, just really it's kind of like a hurricane. We had some time to prepare. So, I think the people that struggled maybe were the ones that didn't believe it was going to happen or didn't believe that we would end up here. But anybody that took the advice and said, okay, yeah, this is going to be bad, had some time to prepare and do a lot of good stuff. And so not many major challenges. I think it was the weekend of the 14th or 15th of March, we made a decision globally. We're all going to work from home as a company. And then over that weekend, I would say about 20 countries migrated to that situation. And we ran into the obstacles. Some people didn't have laptops. And so we made sure that they took their work computers home and we, did asset tags and tracked them and encouraged folks to take their docking stations or monitors just to get as comfortable as they could at home. So I think all that worked out real well. We're very regionalized, decentralized organization. So every country, every region has a little bit of autonomy. So they were all, deciding on what they're going to pay for. And in our cases, we paid for some extra equipment to make sure that their home experience, maybe an extra monitor, extra keyboard, extra docking station. So overall, I think it went as well as can be expected. Again, putting the health issue aside, which has been drastic and unbelievable and really bad, but from working from home and getting our company ready, I think we did a pretty good job.
So in the different regions and the different parts of the world, were there any privacy issues or any work from home issues that you incurred or expected, or they were unexpected? How does GDPR come into play? Any of that? Were you affected by any of that?
A little bit. Again, having been global and already been in Europe for a lot of years, we were already pretty much GDPR compliant in a lot of areas. And so, for example, the VPN, we made sure that the VPN connections and the VPN servers were in Europe, for example, for any country that really required it. Although during a crisis, even GDPR, they were a little bit more lax, but we tried to follow the guidelines as best we could. And so we made sure that their access, their data stayed in country or in the EU as much as possible. So we made sure that was happening. Again, having a little bit of time to prepare and already being there. So in general, not too bad. I mean, we use cloud storage and that is GDPR compliant. So in general, nothing there. I think because it was a crisis and most countries went to their work from home and said, just do what you have to do to get started. I think now, as time has gone on, now we are having more conversations, and we'll get to some of these questions a little bit later in our conversation here, but definitely more discussions around making sure that, yes, we may have given you a little bit of a leeway, a little bit of a relax, but now we really got to get back to where we were because we can't be relaxed forever. So, but not too many challenges because we were already there for several years.
So in essence, everybody had their own equipment. It was corporate equipment. You had a policy. You were well prepared for that. So you didn't really have to cross the bridge of where someone was maybe had to rush to go work from home and maybe had to use their own equipment to connect to your infrastructure. That was just not accepted. It was...
Well, I would say we do provide a lot of equipment, but we do also have, BYOD, work from home opportunities as well, because we've had flexible workforces for a while. So we did run into a few where maybe their equipment wasn't up to date or needed better equipment. So we did place some orders, like a lot of the firms, not too many, but just a few orders for new equipment. But like everybody else, it took a while to get there. We did have a set of loaners for those folks that really needed a loaner laptop, for example, where it was just not conducive to take their desktop home. And also, you got to remember, being a real estate firm, we were considered essential. So a lot of our staff, even though Hines as a company went from home, I would say over 1,000 team members, property managers, engineering, folks that have to help run the building, we're still going into the building space. And so we really, even though we did a company work from home scenario, a lot of our team members have not really been work from home 100%. So they had to have equipment back at the office as well as having resources back at home. So we did have to buy some resources, but I think in general we were in pretty good shape. Nobody was not able to work. And then just as a cybersecurity stands, we don't allow work computers on our VPN. So anybody who connected to VPN had to have a Hines computer, but we did set up remote desktop, virtual desktops for those that had to come in more through a browser as opposed to a VPN.
Nice. So I have a question over here coming in from one of the social media platforms. It says that, did you hold any focused work from home training for your employees and consultants that was particularly around using or co-sharing Wi-Fi routers and other resources like printers and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and again, we'll talk about some of the work that we've been doing with the Cyber Summit and the Cyber Task Force here in Houston, but leveraged a lot of that language, a lot of the stuff we put together on educating on the home front, right? I mean, we all talk about the consumer and the employee back at the house. We can protect them within our four walls, within our network, but what happens when they go home? What can we do there? And so absolutely, we stood up a intranet site, we called it COVID-19 hub for both employees and officers. And so again, there was some, as we move forward, there were more sensitive pieces of information we wanted to share with the leadership, but then we also wanted to share with the employees. So we set up a hub, established some training early on. We actually did, take your equipment home. I think 2 weeks before we went all home, we had a bunch of folks taking their equipment home and testing to make sure they could work. So we did a lot of that. We did some training. We focused a lot on cybersecurity. We put best practices on how to secure your Wi-Fi at home, how to secure your workstation, patch management, all that. But also some of the things that we don't think about. If you think about, especially with from a data privacy, confidentiality standpoint, a lot of times we have offices and we have paper strewn all over the office, and a lot of that is sensitive, confidential information, and we don't think much of it because we just close our door and we walk off. Well, you can't work like that at home, right? I mean, you can't just have all your papers sitting out with your spouses, your significant others, and your children can see. And so we had to also educate folks about, you got to change your work style a little bit. You can't just have stuff all over the place. And so we educated folks about that as well, because that's something that, you always think about the technology, but it's just as important as the processes and what people do as a human. And so we focused on that as well, to make sure that the people were thinking that, and that isn't, yes, it's kind of normal because you can do your work, but it's not normal because you're not back at the office. And so there's a few nuances you have to take into account.
So how did you, let's talk about, I'm assuming you saw a bunch of increased phishing and ransomware attacks.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was high sensitive.
A little bit.
How did you prepare your staff to kind of deal with those phishing and ransomware attacks, or did you just was it just business as normal for you? Because it was so sensitive. It's such a high interest point at that time. People have different vulnerable conditions. There was so much information. Oh, should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? And all of those things were so easy to bait people into clicking on an email. There's still a lot of that going on. So what did you see around that?
Well, I mean, I'll start answering your question by, again, the preparation, right? And so if you think about, what we did ahead of time really helped during this situation, right? So ahead of time, phishing campaigns, annual cybersecurity training, awareness, videos. We have an intranet page that's focused strictly on cybersecurity that we update on a regular basis, and we push out notifications or stories as things happen. So our employees were already accustomed to that awareness, right? And so they know that during certain times of the year when things are bad on the cyber front, they'll get extra alerts or messages in their email or on the intranet homepage, warning about certain things. And so the employee base was already kind of accustomed to that, because that's kind of been our practice. And again, some of those are not very expensive things you can do. Even just that external banner on your email that says this came out from outside the firm, when someone's trying to phish your domain name and one of your employees. And so stuff like that we did up front just carried over, right? So a lot of that already carried over. And so folks were already accustomed to us giving those warnings and those awareness. But absolutely, we amped up the communication. We put special sections on our hubs just about cybersecurity. We found what was happening at the time. People were trying to get people to click on links to learn more about the CDC, to learn more about how to stay healthy, to learn more about the unfortunately the fatality counts. And so bad actors were using all those to try to get into our users and our employees. And so we just amped up our awareness education for about 2 or 3 weeks. They're probably getting a lot more emails that they were accustomed to about cybersecurity, but it was very helpful. And then even the Zoom situation that took place right around that time, right, as people started getting on Zoom as a platform and other platforms, and some of the cybersecurity concerns that came about that, we were very proactive in communicating that and talking about how we were protecting, because we use Zoom quite a bit, protecting our employees with what was happening. Again, trying to separate the what's happening in the news versus what Hines is doing to protect them, and we did that, and that was very effective. We saw an uptick, absolutely, from the systems we have in place, but we did not see any major incident or people clicking more than normal. I mean, to our employees' credit, they really honed in on that and did not become victims.
And so we've talked about Hines internally and your internal operations. Now y'all are into, commercial real estate and building developments and planned cities and, just massive development. What about your tenants, and what were their expectations? And do you think that their expectations now post-COVID will change, or what are they asking for? What do you see as some of the changes, especially with so many people working from home, and large companies like Google and Apple, and you're hearing this discussion around the fact that they're just going to say, well, everybody doesn't always have to go into a building in downtown Houston to work from. So just what are y'all seeing, and what's that cultural change that's taking place?
Do we have a couple hours to talk about that one?
Yeah, we do.
That's a big one. That's a big one. No, I mean, I think, and I'll answer a few, and again, we can always ask more other questions, but no, I mean, I think you've seen there are several industries that got disrupted, right? Absolutely, the travel, the hotel industry, but real estate, commercial real estate, we're one of the bigger impacted ones, right? I mean, the fact that people are working from home, and do they go back to the office? So I'll answer that in a minute. But I think going into this, our tenants, number one, they expected the buildings to be open if they wanted to come in, right? And so even though this crisis was taking place in various countries, it was our obligation, both from a agreement, lease, and investor standpoint, that their buildings stay open if we're supposed to keep them open. So again, we needed to figure out a way to keep our employees healthy, safe, while we were doing it, but also make sure that the tenants that were coming into the space were healthy and safe. And so we put in our protocols. Like I said, having pandemic plans ahead of time, we already had cleaning protocols. We had protocols on elevators and everything that you're seeing a lot more of now. But we already had those in place even before this idea of coming back to the workplace or back to the office, because we did have employees and tenants in the space. And so we the expectation was from a tenant is we need to be able to get in and keep us safe. So we did that very effectively, I believe. And then most other real estate firms, I think, did that early on. So I think we got over the initial crisis, initial hump, and then everybody kind of settled in. Now it's the inverse, right? It's like, now how do we get back into the office, and Hines and other commercial real estate firms, how are you going to make it even safer, or continue the perception that it's safe, or the reality that it's safe? And so that's kind of been the focus now, is how do we, and we kind of joke, it's like, it's kind of like going to the ocean, right? You go to the beach, you're having a fun time, but then someone 2 miles down reports there's a shark, and so it's like, well, now how do you convince the people 2 miles away to stay in the water, right? As opposed to come out of the water because it's 2 miles away. And same thing here is, how do we convince our tenants that it's safe to come back to the building, right? And so with the protocols we have in place on our website, we have a whole section called Ready, where we describe what we're doing to get people back in safe into the office. And so that's the one expectation that our tenants have, is make sure we continue to stay safe. And then, as you're seeing with, temperature reading, temperature scanning, a lot more offices are putting in thermal readers, thermal scanners, so that employees can check their temperature, make sure they don't have a fever on the way in. We've got protocols with our own employees where they have to check their temperatures on the way in or at home before they even leave, and contact HR. And so a lot of firms are doing that as well. And then now we're looking at technology for touchless, right? So like if you think about elevators, everybody always has to push that button. Well, there are some elevators that we have in some of our buildings, but not some of the older buildings that are more, iPad-like, mobile, Bluetooth, maybe don't have to touch them as much. We're looking at films we can put on the button so that you can touch the film and not the button. We have our cleaning crews cleaning those buttons probably 12 times a day, on a regular basis, just because, they're high touch points. And so I think, again, our tenants expect us to be looking out for them. And so I think Hines and other real estate firms are doing that because we do want them in the space to come back. I think once they come back, because of the work from home situation, that's where it gets really interesting, right? And that's where it's like, well, are we going to need more space? Are we going to need as much space? If half my staff is working from home going forward, do I really need that space, right? And so initially your reaction is, well, vacancy is going to go up and we don't need as much space in those buildings. But then you factor in the social distancing piece, right? The fact that you're supposed to stay 6 feet apart, or you're supposed to have social distancing. And so then you got to say, well, I may not need much space, but then maybe I need more space because I need to make sure that they're separated out. So it's an interesting dynamic, right? It's like I may not need as much space because people are working from home, but I may need more space because they've been too tight in that space. So we think that you're going to see a kind of a leveling off where you're going to see more people working from home, but I don't think you're going to see a shrinkage in the need of space. You're just going to see a reconfiguration of the space. And so even in our own space at headquarters here in Houston, we've already gone and analyzed which floors, we need to move cubicles around, which floors we need to put X's or tape that somebody can't sit in that cubicle because there's not enough distance. And so when you look around, it's kind of like a restaurant today. When you go in there 50%, you only see a certain amount of tables that are available, but they haven't reduced the size of the restaurant footprint, right? They've just changed the table layout. And so I think you're going to see that with a lot of real estate. And so we optimistically, we believe that there won't be a major reduction, but there will be a change in how you use it. And then I think for firms like Hines and other firms, going back to my analogy of the beach, we're going to have to get you excited to come back to the space. So, gyms, yoga studios, coffee bars, regular bars, more restaurants, more activities, all that stuff. We're going to have to figure out how to put more of that stuff into our buildings and not just make them a place where people go work. And most firms have already started doing that. I think if you see some of the newer buildings, you'll see a lot of that amenity stuff. But we're going to have to amp it up even more because we're going to need people to get excited about coming back to the office.
So I guess when you look at that, you're really saying there might be more infrastructure, more connectivity, more technology into play.
Absolutely.
And therefore it expands the whole issues around privacy and what data you keep, what data you collect on people, and in order to give them a better experience, as well as the security aspects. So there's going to be a lot of that going on too.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's probably going to be our biggest challenge as CIOs and cybersecurity experts, right? Is how do we, because how do we make sure that what we're bringing in, number one, during this mad rush, but also just thinking, 2 to 3 years down the road, how do we make sure it's secure, reliable, data privacy? If you think about the difference in countries, right? China, with their culture and their government, they put in these cameras. They can follow you throughout the city. They can know who you are. It's kind of like a Vegas, when they can, have cameras everywhere. Whereas other countries don't allow that, right? Don't allow you capturing personal data. Don't allow you capturing their images. In GDPR in Europe, you have to be able to opt out, right? And so even if you're capturing my image, I need to be able to say, I don't want you capturing my image anymore. You need to remove it from your system in the GDPR. And so, and even California is starting to see some of that. And I think it's going to be a huge challenge for all of us in this cybersecurity space to really vet those providers, really understand where that data is, what are they capturing, where is it being stored, make sure that if you are going to have to be GDPR compliant, that you can remove it. It's even the thermal scanners, the ones we've put in, we're not capturing any data. They're there for as an amenity. You as a tenant and as an employee of a tenant, you come in and use it, but you're using it just like you would use a faucet. We're not capturing any data because it's too it's too risky, from both cybersecurity, making sure it's not connected to our networks, and then also from a data privacy perspective. So, absolutely, it's just the beginning for a cybersecurity professional.
And so let me remind our viewers that we are happy to take and field questions. So if you put your questions into the video, into the comments section underneath the video, we will, excuse me, sorry, as we go along, we will field some questions. And so let's talk a little bit now about, you have been so involved in various community efforts, and you give of yourself and you give of your time. So what drives you to do that? And, you've got technology, there's a technology side to you, and then there's just a human side to you. So what drives you?
Besides, feeling that sleeping is overrated. No, I mean, I think what you just said is key to me, that human side. I think my whole career, my whole life, I think I've tried to, number one is, and we won't go into what's happening on the racial side, but the stereotyping stuff. But if you think about IT professionals, even when I was back in school and back in college, it was like, well, an IT person looks like this. An IT person has a pocket protector. An IT person, only knows black and white. An IT person, and so we were all, growing up in the 70s and 80s, IBM, like, it's like if you were an IT professional, you were like IBM. And nothing wrong against IBM, but that was the prototype back then, right? Everybody kind of was an IT professional like this. And I think my whole career, I've tried to show the human side and the flexible side, that we're not robots. We're not, we are people. We are humans first. And I think that's important. I think as a IT professional, the soft skills, have become even more important than they used to be, right? And especially as some stuff gets commoditized, as things get to the cloud, as some services that we were providing, 10, 20 years ago are being provided differently. And so I think that's, been the big driver, is just humanize the profession, one thing. And then on the second part is just, the giving back. I think I was raised by a single mom that always thought about others first, right? And so she was always thinking about, how do I help my neighbor? How do I help that person? How do I help that person that needs, even though we were poor, but, she was always helping that other person. And so I think I was raised that way. And so that's always been, the way I want to do it, and then I want to pay it forward. And so that's why I spend so much time, as you saw in my bio earlier, with youth organizations. It's just like knowing how I grew up, very poor, feeling I didn't have opportunities in very tough neighborhoods, is I want to be able to show the next generation and the next generation that there are opportunities. And, I've talked about this, Umesh, even with your organizations, right? It's like, how do we show the next generation opportunities and open doors for them? And so I've been doing that, right out of college. I coached youth sports, back then, even when I didn't have a family, because I enjoyed, teaching sports. Number one, I like sports, but just trying to show role models, and that, there's a professional that's spending some time with you. You're in a tough neighborhood, you can barely afford equipment for a baseball league, but here's just some professional coming down here and taking their time to be with you and then show you what's possible. And so it's just been my DNA, and I enjoy it. I joke about sleep being overrated, but I wouldn't give it up. I mean, I enjoy the dialogue. I enjoy these next generation, these kids, these children who don't think they have a future, and all of a sudden they're thinking about their future. And I've said this in other interviews, and it's like, I really, even if they don't remember my name, I could care less. I just want them to remember there was somebody out there in the past that showed them a future, and now they're excited about that future. And so I'll continue to do it. And then that translates to what, we're doing on the, on some of the business volunteering, right? I mean, you and I do a lot of volunteer work on, enhancing our organizations, but also enhancing the industry as a whole, both real estate, cybersecurity, and then the IT community. So I mean, I could, you got me, you hit a nerve on that one, because I could talk about that one for a long time, but that's why I do it. Again, it's just in my DNA.
So we have a couple of questions coming in, and I'll get to that question here in a moment. But you talked about youth, and one of the things, as we also talked about Cyber Houston a little bit. You were beginning to talk about that. We'll come back and talk about Cyber Houston and youth maybe in a minute, but I do want to recognize Andy Roos. He's got a question. He's a member of our, as you know, he's a founding member of our Houston Cyber Summit and is a member of Cyber Houston as well. And he says, Jesse, are you thinking the people at your organization will have more days of working from home? And if so, what are you guys doing to better protect them? And as background, if you remember, Andy is their chief cybersecurity architect over at Miraplex, and that's a pretty large multi-state service provider. So anyway, that's the question.
Hey, Andres, good to see you. Andres is a good friend of mine also. Yeah, I mean, I think reality is, and I'll speak to my team, but also I think the reality is that, yes, I think more employees will work from home going forward, even beyond COVID. Because I think if there were any doubters out there that you couldn't be effective working from home, I think a lot of them have changed their minds. I think it's still going to be a role situation, company culture situation, because the social side of me, I do like being in the office. I mean, I enjoy doing these discussions because I'm interacting with folks. I mean, that's my personality. And so I do miss not being in the office and catching up with my coworkers and my friends. I've been at Hines, over 25 years. And so I've made a lot of friends. And so I do miss that. I miss hanging out with Umesh, Andres, and the rest of the team during our meetings and just events. So I do think there is the need to go back to the office, but the reality is there will be more working from home. I've already told, my team is that I have no problem with, people in Houston working from home 2 or 3 days a week and then coming in 2 or 3 days a week, depending on what they're working. Because if you think about especially in the Houston market, some of our team members, they have that hour and a half commute in one way and then another going back the other way. And if there's traffic, it's worse. So you're thinking about 2 to 3 hours on the road, and what they've been able to do working from home in this situation is like, I don't want them going back to that 5 days a week. And so there will be that flexibility. Of course, like anything else, it won't be it'll be a privilege, right? You won't want to abuse it, right? And I don't think I've seen anyone abuse it right now. So I trust my team and they're working from home, but absolutely there will be more of that. And then how do we protect them? I think what we've been doing today, I mean, we've already protected them. I think the interesting challenge will be because you'll be working maybe potentially if you don't have a mobile device or a laptop, you might be working on one computer at the office and then another computer at home, making sure that the patch management and what we're doing with one, we do to the other. And so I think it's just making sure that we follow the best practices we put in place and don't slack off, right? Just because we see people in the office, we're like, okay, they're safe, they're secure. No, you still got to make sure you're protecting them at home because they are working from home. And then again, we've been a mobile force for a long time. So we've had to protect people working from home or working from a hotel or working from a Starbucks or an airport for a long time. So just working from home is similar, but I think we'll continue the awareness of your home networks, right? I think we've already done that a little bit, and most firms probably have done that a little bit. Continue to educate the employee when you're at your house, but I think that's just going to be an ongoing thing. Our intranet will have a special section on that. It's not going to be one and done. There'll be a constant barrage of how do you continue to stay safe at home, because that is the new norm.
Yeah, and when you were talking about the hour commute, it felt like you were talking about me because I've done that for 30 some years, always traveled an hour and 15 minutes each way. And what I found though is that by working from home during this period of time, obviously there are those other issues, family issues that you have to kind of also traverse and work through, having your own secure space, and then the doorbell for the house,
the dogs,
and the dogs, and then the work, work has to be done, and things around the house have to be fixed. So people kind of coming in and out. And how do you protect that yourself while they are coming in and out? And there's been a whole realization to that. And then on the flip side, I have found that we end up that the drive in and the drive out was a good break from work. Mm-hmm. And now what I see is the day is blurred. I start at the same time, but I just continue on because I don't have to stop and get in a car to drive. I'm still working through that period of time. So it's that's another area which is not really cybersecurity related, but it's personal health related, and we have to take time to really take those breaks and and disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I think that's where I'm very fortunate with what Hines has done. So we put a big focus on wellness, right? And so we've had doctors on calls or employee calls. We've talked about, taking breaks. We've talked about adjusting your schedule. So for example, in your situation, an hour and a half drive or an hour drive, maybe you go walking for that hour, or maybe you ride your bike for that hour. And so I think that's what we've been talking to our employees about is you can still control your schedule. It's like Zoom calls, right? When we first started, it was like, I have to accept every meeting, every Zoom call. You don't. You can still say I'm not available, just like you would back in the office, right? Or even Zoom calls. I can still call in and I'll put my camera on every once in a while. I don't have to always turn on my camera. Back at the office, we would just get on a phone call and you would multitask, right? Yes, you can do, I like face-to-face better, but you could still do some of that if you need to, right? And so I think it was just that education of there are some differences, but there's also a lot of similarities, but just tweak yourself, right? And so I think, for me, it's definitely the health piece. You have to do something. You have to disconnect. Like I listen to a lot of music, when I'm in the car. And so I put on my headphones and I walk around and listen to music, for half an hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And so not only am I getting exercise healthier, but I'm also decompressing, right? Because you do need to decompress. You need to turn off that IT hat and turn on the dad hat or the husband wife hat, right? And so I think you do need to decompress. And so I think people have been successful now, have figured out how to change their schedule and decompress, and they're being just as effective as if they were back in the office.
Yeah, so I think that's the big point, is that you need to carve out time for yourself. The me time is still very important.
Yep.
So let's transition to talking about Cyber Houston.
Mm-hmm.
You have been a founding member of Cyber Houston. You were involved with the Greater Houston Partnership Emerging Technology Force when we first got started many years ago.
That's how I got to meet you, man. That's how.
I feel like you're just beginning to grow up, and I'm beginning to get old.
We're both very experienced.
But it's been a joy, absolute joy, working on the wireless infrastructure for Houston, and then working on, marketing Houston as a technology hub, and then moving on and and then crafting the Greater Houston Cybersecurity Task Force, and then we grew it beyond the capacity, and we were asked to take it and see if we wanted to do something with it. And so a core group of us, and you included, kind of took it and created a coalition, and we've put out some very good resources, all volunteer driven, all free for our community. They're like the Business Vitality Guide, the Cyber Preparedness Assessment, and the Cybersecurity for the Board of Directors. So what's your vision around advancing these resources, and how should and could the community continue to use these?
Yeah. Well, and I kind of mentioned that early on. I think the fact that those, when we first started, especially the cybersecurity piece, we started with the focus of the small to mid-sized business in mind, right? Because organizations like ours, Hines, and bigger organizations, especially here in Houston, oil and gas and the medical industry, they have big staffs, they have cybersecurity experts, they have folks that can really hone in on this. But we felt that because of the supply chain and what happened with some of the breaches in the past through coming in through third parties or vendors, that we felt that we really needed to educate the small to mid-size and show them that there are things that they can do that are cost effective and do not take a lot of resources. And so that got me excited, when I first joined you in the group and started this, because it felt like what I'm doing with the youth, right? It's like I'm really empowering and helping these firms that need help. And so that felt really good to do that. And the guide that we created, I think we're on revision 3 or 4, but it was really around that. It's like, okay, let's make sure that we're helping that community. And then, as you said, it got stronger, better. Team members that joined our group, brought in great ideas, and so it got much better. And so now it is more applicable to not just mid-size, small to mid, but also some other larger firms as well. And I think my thought is, and we've had conversations around this, is the next iteration of that, I think it's going to come back a little bit more to the small to mid-size, because I think what we've realized, especially in a situation like this, is the the work from home situation, you could have leveraged a lot of that was in the guide to help you in your work from home, protect your networks at home, best practices at home, all this stuff, because your home is like a small business, right? And so I think the guide got maybe a little too big and too ambitious. And so I think we're going to hone in on really the mission, which is help those that maybe need a little bit extra help. And I think I'm excited about that because we're working on that right now. I'm hopeful that we'll have a new version by the end of the year, but with COVID, that may slide a little bit, but definitely early next year, we'll have a new version. And it'll be really, we'll still have something for the larger firms, but I think we do want to go back to the kind of where we started and hone in on protecting the small and mid-size, and especially with the newer threats that are out there and the newer technologies that are out there, that maybe some have become more affordable, or maybe when we first started, they weren't as affordable. So that's the goal for that guide. And that's kind of how it started. And then the assessment, I think, is fantastic. We went from a paper assessment. Now it's a online digital assessment. It's a great way to learn, kind of get a sense of where you are, either personally, like, right, work from home, or small to mid-size. And then it just gives you a good baseline and areas where you can address very quickly. So the fact that it's digital is fantastic. I'd love for the next version of the guide. Right now it's a PDF form, but I would love for that to be also digital and more today, along with maybe a PDF version or a printed version for those that need it. So I think that's where we're moving. And then the board of directors has been phenomenal. I think a lot of us do spend time with board members and trying to describe cybersecurity and have struggled in the past on how do you take a big topic and condense it down to manageable chunks that can be understood. And it's been fantastic. And I know I've heard that it gets used quite a bit by my peers that have to do with boards. So fantastic material we put in place. And again, Umesh, under your leadership and the opportunity to work with you and some amazing folks, we don't want to stop. It just, I think, right or wrong, cybersecurity will never stop because, bad actors get smarter and smarter. And, but I think the fact what we've done and the fact that we've provided it for free to the local community, but even broader. I mean, I share this with my CIO community outside of Houston, and they love it. And they're starting to do stuff within their own communities and leveraging our material, and it's out there. So use it. And so I'm excited about the fact that we're giving it away.
Yeah, and we have this collaboration now forming with Cyber Texas out of San Antonio. And, they are helping share some of our materials. We're going to share some of their materials. They've been very involved with the youth side and the Cyber Patriot side. And we're beginning to do a lot of that with our HISD and Aldine Independent School District. And, as you know, the Jason Ritchie, one of our other founding members, put a lot of effort with the Federal Reserve Bank to helping build up Eastwood High School, Eastwood Academy, into a center of excellence. And now that's beginning to spread throughout the HISD area. So that's something else that I think we're very, very proud of, that we have internships, we have externships for our students and the teachers. And they've invited them into our organizations and into our NOCs and our SOCs and shown them how we do stuff so that the instructors are also prepared to talk about and discuss things with their students. So I think,
well, and if you don't mind me adding to that, is also even at the college level, right? If you think about the partnerships and the relationships we've created with the local colleges and us as an organization, you, myself, and the rest of the team members, helping their curriculums and their cybersecurity engineering programs to really beef up so that the graduates coming out of their universities are more prepared for the workforce around cybersecurity. And so, the fact that we've got connections with, I think, every university in the Houston area for sure is fantastic, because not only are we looking at the lowest level of a student or youth, but even at preparing them for the workforce. And that's exciting as well.
And we've got with all the 2-year colleges and the 4-year, we've got HCC, Lone Star, that you mentioned it, and we've got
many of them are on a task force.
Main campus, U of H downtown,
HBU, all of them.
And so, all of them and their deans are with us, and we built internship programs and for their students as well. So, and then Mary Dickerson from the U of H, she's another founding member. Stan Hamper, these are great people, as well as with HCC and Lone Star. So, it's just I think we're on the right track where that's concerned.
The work doesn't end, man. The work doesn't end. It's just, there's more to do.
I'm very, very proud of the scholarship that we have put together, the $1,000 scholarships for each of the area schools. They nominate their best student. And so that's a way for all us corporations to also give give forward.
Right.
One of my goals is to see if we can get 100 of our local companies to put in $1,000 each and give 100 kids $1,000 each every year for 100,000 in scholarships. So we need to get there. Yeah. But I want to kind of come back here for a minute to the Houston Cyber Summit and what we're going to do. But we have a comment that has come in, a question from Knuckle on YouTube, and he says, are you noticing or observing an increased number of attacks in your sector as well? Healthcare organizations have seen an exponential increase after COVID. We kind of talked about that a little at the beginning of the section, but maybe you can revisit it a little bit.
Not a major increase like within our buildings, as an example, but I think that's why everybody's taking a really cautious return to the workplace, return to the office approach, right? And and again, thank you to the healthcare professionals and all our frontline folks, because they've been doing the lion's share of this. And same thing with our property managers, engineers. They've been out there on the front lines. But fortunately for us at Hines, not seen a major increase in our sector. But again, that's where I think we're being very cautious about our own employees, but also our tenants are being very cautious about getting back to the space. And then as an organization, we're trying to put all the protocols in place. So not seeing a major increase, and we hope not to see, but I think that's also dictated by the local and the state governments and what they're trying to do as far as opening up the businesses and the offices. But fortunately, to answer your question, no major uptick, and we hope not.
So, that's one thing I would like to ask our viewers to do is that to cheer us on. I see that we have 4 thumbs up and likes, and it's nice to see that. It's always nice to get a little thumbs up, a pat in the back. So cheer us on if you think we're doing a good job. And we always think we're doing a good job. We're having some fun.
I'll ask my college friends to call me Butterknife again, and they'll bring me down a peg because I think I'm doing a good job.
So Butterknife, let's talk about how do you've also been a founding co-chair and a program co-chair for the Houston Cyber Summit, which was an outgrowth of Cyber Houston. And we've used that as a platform to take our work product and put it out into the community. Let's talk. What are you seeing about the associations as far as what are they planning there as for the events? Because COVID has just totally changed that whole event landscape. We had our summit planned for April, and then now we have delayed it till October. What are you seeing? You're involved in other associations. What are you seeing? I was involved in one that just took its whole event and made it totally virtual. And then again, the question that I'm really leading up to is what's the corporate mentality right now? They put a moratorium on even having any of their employees attend events. What's that mindset now? Is it changing? Is it like no hold back? Is it cautious? What are you seeing?
Man, that's a tough one. And again, that's where you wish you had a crystal ball, right? Because, as I would say, to answer your first question, I would say the majority have written off 2020, from a physical standpoint. I think the majority of them are just said virtual because of the unknown, right? I mean, it's just so tricky to plan something 4 months in advance and then find out you can't do it, right? And so I think a lot of firms, a lot of organizations that I belong with, we've just said make it virtual, make it a day, make it a half a day, but do something, because again, you do. I mean, there's important information to be distributed. It's just like what we're doing today with this session. There is information that you want to disseminate, and so don't cancel it, but consider virtual. So I would say the majority are virtual. I am in conversations with a few organizations where we are going to try to make something more in person. With SIM, for example, we have some events with the Society of Information Management, and we are still moving forward with a couple of events, but they're outdoor events, and we think we'll be able to hold them because I think we'll be fine there. Indoor events are going to be trickier. but I am in talks with a couple organizations where we are considering trying something, just so that if nothing else, we can learn from what works or what doesn't work, right? Because if you think about in the future, if this happens, hopefully not, but on a more regular basis, we will have to have a plan for on-site, virtual, combination, hybrid. And so we're hoping that we can do something physical in 2020 so that we can try some stuff out, try technology, try distancing, try organizing the meeting rooms and all that. So we're hoping we can do something in 2020, but it's all going to be dictated by the guidance from the city, state, and the government. I think from a business perspective, if we don't get better clearance from the city, the county, or the state, I think Hines especially, we're going to be very conservative, and we're not going to encourage any attendance. But I think it's going to be dependent on what's happening with the city. I think even like going back to the office, we were getting ready to go into phase 2. Hines was getting ready to go into phase 2, and with our Houston offices here. But with the uptick that happened last week in the Houston market, we decided to delay another week or two. And so even that, just two or 3 days of uptick caused us to be more health risk, or risk, not put our people at risk, and be more health conscious. And so it's a hard question to answer. I think if you think you can have something planned and pivot if you have to in a short time frame, I think you should continue to go planning. I think Umesh, you and I have talked about our event. I think it's still okay to think we can do something in person, but I think you and the team and I have talked about we can pivot if we have to, and so I think go for it, but be ready to pivot. I think it's the message I would have.
Yeah, and I think what we will do is continue to keep close tabs on this, and as we had discussed in our council meetings, we'll look at probably the end of July to make that final decision. But,
which I think will be better, because if you think about Memorial, unfortunately the protest, July 4th weekend, I think by the end of July, a lot of firms are going to feel more comfortable of where they are, because we would have gone through a lot of lack of social distancing experiments, if you will, and hopefully the end of July will be a much better barometer. And
we might have to see if that makes sense to have a hybrid, because of social distancing. Maybe companies may only want to send a few number of their people.
Right. Exactly.
More people that they want in there. So we'll just have to probably take a better pulse and figure that out.
Yep.
So is there any last parting words you want to give our audience before I
close? Yeah, I think that Andres asked a good question. Is be prepared for hybrid work from home in the office definitely to the end of the year, and again, I think it's the new way of operating for a lot of firms. And so from a cybersecurity perspective, don't let off the accelerator when it comes to educating your employees of how to be secure at home, and be prepared for that, because I think that is going to be going forward. I'm in the real estate industry, and I love people being in our offices, but even I and our firm knows that it's going to be different. We just have to adapt and make it better so that people do want to come back, but knowing that people are not going to come back on a full-time basis.
Well, thank you, Jesse. It was wonderful having this discussion with you today, and it's been good to be friends, but it's also great to be doing things professionally, right, and helping our community. It's a win-win-win all the way around. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Well, and always, Umesh, always a pleasure. And I can't thank you enough for friendship and the opportunities you've given us and other team members. And again, it's a great community in Houston, and proud to be part of it.
Thank you. And so for our viewers, thank you for taking the time out of your day. We will be posting this presentation to the Cyber Houston YouTube channel, as well as to the cyberhouston.org website. As a reminder, Cyber Houston is a coalition of volunteer, business, cybersecurity, academic, government, and civic leaders. I know that's a mouthful, but that's what we are. We spread ourselves across all communities. Our goal is to continuously educate and inform business leaders on how to manage and govern cybersecurity risk. We take lessons learned from our enterprise members, distill them down into sensible, economical guidance to help small and mid-sized businesses improve their cyber posture, build resilience, and become better and stronger suppliers back to the enterprise. So all our work, it's all volunteer, it's all free, it's all done through the lens of helping SMBs in our region and beyond grow their business. This guidance comes in the form of the Business Vitality Guide, the guidance for the Board of Directors, the Cyber Preparedness Assessment, and the free Cyber Scan. And again, these are all available free of charge and can be found under the Resources tab on the cyberhouston.org website. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and a very special thanks again to our sponsors, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Blue Lance, Reneka Digital, and the University of Houston Downtown. With that, remember to join us on Wednesdays from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for our weekly Cybersecurity Leadership Series. Be safe, stay healthy, have a great day.